They were rampaging along, won their first 2 games. They've lost their last 2, but they could have probably won both of them.
A fantastic looking facility there in the deep south.
I'm sure they're going to come out firing tonight.
From memory, he was leading last week. Are you going to be leading this week, or?
From bottom with 6 points and second from bottom with 3. Yes and no. Yes and no. It paid off for them. They got a 2, double the 4 and won 6 points. Depends what the teams above you do, doesn't it? Welcome to the Bowls Hour, brought to you by Summerset Retirement Villages and Dynasty Apparel. This is the official Bowls New Zealand podcast for talking all things bowls. On the show today, we're going to be talking to rising star Briar Atkinson about her bowls journey so far. We're going to review some listener feedback. I'm not looking forward to that. There could be a bit of a slapping for us. From our junior bowlers segment from last week, and then chat to Mark Cameron, the CEO of Bowls New Zealand, about all things Bowls New Zealand. What else? And finally, pick the brain of Dave Barnett from Kihikihi about their magnificent new artificial green. I'm joined now by my co-host, Alex Reid. Well, you've done another great job, mate. People think that I'm actually doing this work, but you actually do all the work behind the scenes.
Oh, I do some of the work. We need people to say yes, though, Miles, which is helpful. So I like it when they say yes. If you receive an email from me saying, "Can you be on the Bowls Hour?" Yes is always.
Have you had much resistance to it? I mean, and it won't be because the bowls community don't want to get involved. Sometimes they're a little bit shy. Coming on, on a podcast is quite an ordeal for people.
Yeah, I don't think we're scary enough to drive people away, Miles. So I've had a good positive response from everyone I've asked so far.
Talking of responses, how can people engage more in terms of suggestions for us in terms of guests or topics to cover, questions that they want to ask about something that we have covered or something that we haven't covered? How can they get in touch with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're really keen to get some feedback from our community because, it's a bowls podcast, isn't it? So we want to talk bowls. So if you have any suggestions or anything, just flick an email through to info@bowlsnewzealand.co.nz, and if that fails, just Google us and you'll be able to find our contact details on the internet.
There you go. See, I knew there'd be something there, but I think it's good to have a little bit of engagement from people because it makes our job easier, because then they'll come up with ideas for you to go out and chase people down. And it's a massive community. I had a contact from East Coast just recently. Talking about the podcast and volunteering their service as well. So I'll pass that on to you.
I look forward to it.
I'll chuck that onto you. Right, who are we going to talk to first? Who have we got on the line?
Yes, Miles, we've got Briar Atkinson on the line now, all the way from Taranaki. What's the weather like in your neck of the woods, Briar?
It's currently very sunny. There's no clouds in the sky.
That's always good. That sounds like a normal Taranaki day.
What got you into bowls, Briar? How did you get into the game? Because how old are you now? 16, 17?
I'm 17.
So 4 years. You started at 13. How did you get involved in it?
So I got into bowls because of my granddad. He used to play indoor and outdoor, and I beat him in one single end in indoor, and he challenged me to beat him in outdoor, and I've been trying ever since.
Have you managed it yet?
No, he recently just passed away, so I don't think I'll get the chance, but it was one of the biggest highlights of why I started.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Briar, but I suppose every time you go out and represent now on the greens and as you go on, Grandad will be sitting on your shoulder.
Yeah, I always try to make him proud and think what he would say every time.
That sounds like pretty good advice. So you said you've been playing outdoor for 4 years. What's some of your favourite moments from the last 4 years? What sort of successes have you had so far?
So winning the mixed teams with Dale Reid was one of my biggest highlights. And we recently just won the club Interclub, and I was playing singles, so that was quite a good team thing, and it was really nice to be a part of a good team.
That's awesome.
And I have to say, that winning the junior singles in my first second year playing was quite a big thing for me.
Are you much of a sports person, Brian? Like, do you play a lot of other sports?
Yeah. So before bowls, I used to play hockey and swimming and a bit of cricket. So.
How do you find bowls compared to other sports that you've done?
Well, it is so much different just because you're not obviously with your age group a lot. So it was a big change going from people that are 17, 16 years old to people that are roughly around 30 or older. But it's good. They're all very supporters, which I love. They're all very encouraging to the younger generation. They want you to succeed, and they really push you to do well.
Well, you're doing my job now, Briar, because I was just going to ask you that. I said, how have you found it? So they are really supportive. They are what I've found as well, Briar, and I've only been involved in the bowls community for about 4 or 5 years now, is despite the different ranges, people are very supportive, aren't they? And there's a lot of camaraderie there.
Yeah. Well, when I lost my granddad, there was about 10 people from the club that just automatically became like a new granddad to me, and they were all so caring and loving, and everyone will offer you advice and help you and will be willing to go have a practice with you whenever you want, and it's honestly amazing to just feel like you're a part of this one big family.
That's one of the great things I think about the bowls community wherever you go, and I'm glad you've mentioned it. So 4 years of bowls, you've had a lot of success. What's next? Do you have any goals for your next season, Brian? What are you looking to do going forward?
Well, obviously in the extreme long run, I reckon I would love to play for New Zealand and go to the Commonwealth Games. That would be a dream. But in the next 5 years, I think just trying to get to the top 5 in nationals and try to do well on a national level would be amazing. And try to get into bigger tournaments and win some championships. That would be great.
Have you played a nationals yet, Brian? And how did you go?
Yes,
if you did.
I've played in the nationals the last 2 years. So in the singles this year, I got to the last 26, and in the pairs, we got to the last 29. I think.
Oh, yeah.
It was like an odd number.
So how do you find the nationals? Did you enjoy that experience? Was it different to your normal bowls and Taranaki and club stuff?
Oh, it's quite different. Obviously, when you go outside of your region and you play the top people, your game just improves by a mile. You playing better people and playing more serious bowls it just makes you play better, and it's a great learning experience. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. Okay,
well, you learn a lot.
That's good. So we're going to ask this question. You're the first person on the podcast today, the first interviewee, but we're going to ask this question of everybody, and it's an important one, as we thought we might be able to share something with the listeners. So our question we're going to ask everyone today is, what's the best bit of bowls advice you've been given?
Well, mine's not super big or anything. I've received so much advice, but mine was from Daryl when we won the mixed pairs, and it was in the semi-finals in one of the last bowls, and we needed it to win, and he just said, just breathe. Take some time and breathe before you play your bowl. And it helped me tremendously, and it's just stuck. So every time before a big bowl, you just got to breathe and take a second to think.
That sounds like great advice. I think that's good advice for a lot of key moments in life, isn't it? To just just relax that bit, breathe, and don't let the occasion and the emotion overtake you.
Yes, it sticks with me even now, so it was great advice.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Briar. I'm sure you've got a great future.
Thank you for having me.
Great future in the game. And, hey, remember, we gave you your break. When you were in the Commonwealth Games, you come back and let us have a photo of that gold medal.
Okay, I will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Briar Atkinson there from Taranaki. Only 17 years of age, and just another one of the many, many youngsters making their mark on the game of lawn bowls here in New Zealand. Coming up next, we review some listener feedback on junior bowls in New Zealand, so stay tuned to the Bowls Hour.
Welcome back to the Bowls Hour, brought to you by Summerset Retirement Villages and Dynasty Apparel. Miles, we're going to review some listener chat now. I got two emails.
Wow. Dude, you're overwhelmed. That was a lot of work for you this week then.
It's a good start. We're going to review the listener chat about the juniors that we spoke about last week, and I've dragged Mark Cameron, our CEO, into the recording booth as well to see if he has anything to offer. So I thought I'd start off. I'll read out what one of them said, and then we can just have a chat about that. So I got an email from Dennis Mills from Havelock Bowling Club in Marlborough, and he says the reintroduction of the John Flett Trophy would be a great help. Many top-line players have come through this event, and it's played in zones with zone winners going through to a New Zealand final at a junior level, which is interesting. So that we used to have, for those listeners who don't know, we used to have like a national intercentre for junior bowlers, and the John Flett used to be 1 to 2, 1 to 5, and then 1 to 8 year bowlers. I don't know what I think about that. Does anyone think anything about that?
Well, why don't you ask a direct question to the CEO? He's just sitting there right in front of you. Mr. Cameron, could you please address this? Why isn't it there? Are there any moves to either reintroduce it or introduce something, an alternative?
Well, I am a junior bowler. I'll put that on record to start with, so I do appreciate this conversation, probably more than yourself, Alex, or even you, Miles, for that matter.
Yeah.
That's not a great way to start, is it? We're a little bit conscious. Oh, look, I love the idea, and where we went 2 or 3 years ago, which was to move our Champ of Champ finals into winter, I think really allows for this idea to come to fruition. I think if we were to impose a junior nationals or a junior national structure through the summer weeks or summer weekends, we'd be burdening some pretty busy calendars at club and centre level, and it just wouldn't, it wouldn't fly. But I think what we achieved by moving those Champ of Champs into those winter months, the finals, means that, there's no reason why we couldn't advance something similar for a junior side of things as well. I think a better debate at some stage is what classifies as a junior. I don't know whether you've actually done that yet, but I've been around the country, and I thought when I got to the South Island and someone said juniors are 1 to 10 years, I thought, oh well, that's the top end. But then someone said 1 to 12 in one region, so most of the country's 1 to 5 as a junior, but it has a little bit of variation around the country as well.
Bounce around. It's interesting you mentioned the Champion of Champions, because the other bit of listener feedback we got was from John Pearce. He's a 5th-year bowler on Hawke's Bay, and what he'd like to see is a regional Champion of Champions for junior events. So you win your centre junior singles, and you go and play off in a zone. So if I was an Auckland player, I won my centre junior singles here, I could play in a zone with the Auckland sort of region, so Northland, whatever else is near Auckland, Counties, North Harbour, and then that might go through to a national final or something, was his thinking on the matter.
I think that sounds like a great idea. I couldn't have put it any better myself.
I didn't even tell you what he'd written.
No, you didn't.
One thing that intrigued me last week, and you've said it in terms of longevity, is it 1 to 5, is it 1 to 10, is it 1 to 12? What about a handicap system like they have in golf, in terms of, this? I mean, if I go out there, I can only get the ball to the other end, and there'll be other people who pick it up really quickly and therefore are just going to dominate. Would it encourage more people to stay in and level the playing field a little bit if you had some sort of handicap system?
Yeah, it would, and I think the better example is actually squash. Where they're A1, A2, down to Ds and whatever numbers they get to. Some sort of grading system would be great. Where we need to get to first, though, is we need to actually have a system that actually collates results. And then we need to figure out, what's the difference between someone leading versus skipping, or someone playing forwards versus singles. So there's a whole lot of stuff in there, but once you've got the results, you can create some sort of grading system. And I think that's probably where we need to get to. Because we have some, I'm sure you probably talked about it, but we have some incredibly talented juniors, in their first and second year that are winning open competitions. And that sometimes that's just because they're absolutely top sportsmen, but other times it's because they've been playing the old bowls, business house Twilight Bowls for a number of years and had that head start. So
yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting conversation, and there's a conversation that comes up a lot with junior bowlers, because there are really good ones who win open events, and people get a little bit put out, say, when a centre schedules a junior event at the same time as an open event, because they go, well, we've got juniors in both. It's not fair. But I'd almost argue, like, greatest good for the greatest number of people. If you've got a small calendar and you have to run a junior event at the same time as a centre one, let your juniors pick. If you want to go and play in an open event, that's fine. You sacrifice playing in a junior event. And it would probably actually be a way of getting the levels to work themselves out, I think. Because I think if you thought you had a chance, I know for me when I was playing in juniors, I mostly played open events because I didn't.
That's because your ego, though, isn't it? Like,
yeah, absolutely. I can barely get in through the door.
You talk about the calendar, Mark, and obviously it's packed and it's hard to fit other things in. Is it getting easier now with all these artificial greens that are popping up all over the country where you can play all year round? Are you finding that can sort of open the calendar up a little bit?
Yeah, it does. I mean, the days of people going, I'm only ever going to play on a natural green, and I'll never play on an artificial, are gone. Those artificial greens that are being developed now are the equal of a good natural green, so you can play it all year round. I think what we're seeing too, and I hadn't really appreciated it coming from cricket, but cricket used to stop at the end of March. We're still playing, certainly in the upper north, we're still playing bowls in May in this country. So in actual fact, our winters is not like 6 months, it's only like 3 or 4 months. And then we're back on the greens in September, October. So the ability, even the natural greens, to play most of the year, let alone the artificial greens, you can play all year round. And now we've got these roofs being put over top of the greens. It just sets ourselves, our sport up for that 12-month of the year business operation.
No, it's good.
Hey, can I go back to your junior stuff for a
Yes.
second? The best as a junior, the tournament that I developed the most at was the Taranaki Open. So that was I never got to the 5th day. 4 days of good, tough bowls, but it was open. And we were playing guys that have been playing for 30, 40, 50 years, and what we learnt there was incredible. Versus playing in a junior event. I'd encourage all junior bowlers to go and play those open events if you truly want to master this game.
Yeah, and stick around too, I think. We spoke about it last week. It's really, you find success early, but if the only success you find is in your junior pool, you're running the risk of no longer have anything to win. You know what I mean? It's great that junior events exist, and I think everyone should play in them and get that taste of success early, but for sure, if you want to be around for more than 5 years, I think open events I totally agree that's a good.
Well, you need that little
idea.
junior title every now and again just to keep you going.
Yes.
I mean, I celebrated my Riverhead Bowling Club first and second year title wildly. I promoted it around the country.
Business
I know.
card.
Your business
We
card.
never heard the bleeding end of it.
What many didn't ask me was how many were in the field. In my first year, it was just the two of us.
That's irrelevant.
Yeah, no, it is irrelevant. But you do want those sort of games and those sort of events. But actually, if you want to master the game, then get out there and play the best.
It's any sport, you've got to, you only get better by playing against better people. And I think bowls is is almost unique that you can play as a first year bowler. You could play a world champion, and I can't think of many sports that you get that opportunity, and that's a thrill. I mean, it's a thrill just watching the likes of Lawson and McIlroy and those guys, and Joe Edwards, just watching them, let alone being able to play against them.
Yeah, the other thing I would say to if any juniors listening is that by and large, and I think now more than previously, if you ask someone after you've played them why they did a thing or what they thought you could do better, bowlers are pretty happy to share nowadays. Some of them aren't, but by and large, you sit down in the clubhouse after your game and you've been absolutely walloped by Joe Edwards. She'll share some advice and you'll learn something from that. So don't be afraid to talk. Is what I would say. I think it's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. I'm always talking to people and looking for that advice. I try and get it during the game though. Not everyone shares, but you got to talk about something sometimes.
Fair enough too.
But you're just always looking for that improvement, and absolutely, Miles, I take your point aside. I'd much rather play someone much better than me. I haven't found anyone that's much worse than me, but someone much better than someone the equal actually. Because I constantly want that challenge and want to be tested. I'm not saying everyone's got that makeup in their psyche, but that's certainly what I look for in sport.
Yeah, very much so. And sometimes you react better under those positions. Put yourself under pressure, see how you react under pressure, and then go off and work on the aspects of your game that you think that, need improving. Right, we're going to let the CEO go just for a while because we're going to bring you back. Have you got you wanted to say something before you went? You want to talk about your title again or something?
No.
You go?
I'm fine. Am I coming back though?
You are coming back, yeah. Sorry, didn't Alex tell you? Yeah, so we're going to let the CEO, Mark Cameron, go now and then bring him back for a little chat later on. If you've got anything that you want to ask, any questions, any suggestions, info@bowlsnewzealand.co.nz. Up next, we're going to be talking... We're not talking that, are we? Shall I do that bit again? Because someone else says, up next, we're talking to... Aren't we talking to... I thought he was last, though.
We're talking to Mark.
I thought you said he was going to go out and then come back.
I've already left.
He's
Coming back.
You said the last we're talking to Darren and then we're going to bring him back and talk to him.
I might have said that, but that's not what's happening.
All right, that's okay. We'll just do that thing. That's all right. No, that's all right. And we're going to keep Mark Cameron, CEO of Bowls New Zealand, with us. Bring him back for more chat here on the Bowls Hour. Welcome back to the Bowls Hour, brought to you by Summerset Retirement Villages and Dynasty Apparel. With us on this podcast at the moment, we have CEO of Bowls New Zealand, Mark Cameron. Mark, the last couple of years have been a nightmare, I'd imagine, for you with the fluctuations. What about this season? How are we looking at Bowls New Zealand this season?
Oh, it's a tough season for our clubs, primarily up in Auckland where we lost... Was it 105 days?
107, I think
107 days. Yeah. And that 107 days before Christmas is our Christmas function business, is our corporate business. So some pretty tough times for our clubs up north because they lost that revenue. I guess what it has meant, though, is that by the time we got back on the bowls green, everyone was really keen. And we're seeing good numbers in our membership. We're seeing the social bowlers come back in. People just wanted to get out and about and do things. So some really positive signs there as well. But tough.
Did the Auckland bowlers, from memory, they went reasonably well at the Nationals, didn't they? Considering they'd had that sort of restricted time on the greens.
Well, the Cantabrians did exceptionally well though.
They're at home though, weren't they? For there, they're like.
They're at home, but they delivered. But the Auckland bowlers, they came through. The top ones came through. You got to remember that not a lot of Aucklanders did travel to the South Island for Nationals as well. There's still a lot of nervousness out there, in terms of travelling with COVID. And I'm sure we'll pick up the fours and mixed pairs in a second. But it's that travelling thing that's putting off, people getting further into bowls and just the community.
Do you know something? You're right, and I can sense it around that. I went to Takapuna, just my usual weekly curry, and the place was empty. The streets were empty. It's almost like any sort of business area or usually bustly places. This was on a Friday afternoon. Seems to have sort of died down there. Everyone's in a little bit of abeyance, and they're just waiting for sort of it to be over almost before they fully engage again.
I think we're just waiting to get COVID, aren't we?
Yeah.
To be honest,
that sense of impending doom, isn't it? That sort
it's
gonna,
reality. It's going to happen. Yeah. Well, I'm triple jabbed, so hopefully I'll get through the other side.
Yeah.
Because as you see, I'm morbidly obese. I'm a diabetic, so I'm probably right on the top of the list for getting bumped off. But I feel confident now that we've cheered me up.
What a trippy conversation.
I'll pass it over to you now,
Yeah,
Alex.
we'll move over. So you mentioned it earlier, Mark. The mixed pairs and the fours and Taranaki, it had to be cancelled. Can you talk us through how was that to go through as a CEO sitting there?
Had to be cancelled. That sounds so easy when you say it like that.
It does.
So the Summerset National Fours and Mixed Pairs, Alex.
Yes.
This show's brought to you by Summerset.
Yeah,
right. It was really tough, that one. Really, really tough. And I can assure you that on the Friday, so we made a decision on the Monday to cancel the Summerset National Fours and Mixed Pairs. On the Friday, we had plans to run the Summerset National Fours. We were going to skip the mixed pairs, but we were going to run the fours. And then that was that weekend that we went, suddenly, all week we'd gone 100, 200 all week. And then we went 400, 800. And at that 800 point, we were like, hang on, this is a tougher decision than we thought. So we discussed it, and even then it was a borderline decision whether we'd cancelled or not. Since then we've been proven because we've gone, 400, 800. What are we at? 2,500 now?
Oh, we're well into the thousands at the moment.
And that's probably a massive undercount as well.
Yeah, it is. But we were at the time, it was a really tough call because we sincerely felt we could deliver a Nationals easily within the guidelines. We'd just use 1 green clubs, we'd use 6 rinks, we'd only have 50 people playing at any club at any time. The thing that tipped us over the edge, though, was the number of South Island people coming to us and saying, what happens if we get to Taranaki, find we're a close contact or we get COVID? And in that 8-day period, there's a reality that a number of people could have, it's going to happen, this week in the thousands, but there's a number of people that could have been close contacts or get COVID. They would have to self-isolate in the Taranaki region for 7 days. They can't go home back to the South Island because they can't fly and they can't go on the ferry. And they're going, well, this is too big a risk. We can't afford not only for that extra 7 days to be stuck in Taranaki, we also can't afford to take an extra 7 days away from our jobs or our family or whatever is back at home for them. So that was the thing that tipped us over the edge on that one.
Yeah, it was never really a question of whether it could be run, was it? Like, within the guidelines, you can run it, but I think it's about really obviously listening to the community and the concerns that they had from where I sit.
Yeah, it was about the integrity of the event.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, can you truly call it a Nationals if, one of the islands, South Island in this case, they're largely walking, and not attending the event.
And they went okay at the national singles and pairs.
And they did. Yes, they did.
Actually, maybe for the North Islanders, it would have been quite.
Yep.
It would have been good. Yeah, leave them down there. Why do we need them in it anyway?
Yeah.
Give everyone else a chance.
So, mate, it was such a tough decision, and we over the last 18, 24 months, we've made many decisions around COVID. I can genuinely say that was the hardest, and partly it was because I put my own personal hat on, and I was damn looking forward to playing in the fours and the mixed pairs this year, and I knew we could play it, but at the end of the day, we had to make a decision that was in the best interests of the country. And all bowlers in the country, not just those sitting in the North Island.
What was the feedback from the community? Obviously, there'd have been some disappointment. Part of Taranaki obviously would have been disappointed. But what was the general feedback? Was it an understanding one, or is there pitchforks and flaming torches outside for the bowling community coming for your head?
I think on the Monday there was a bit of negativity, and I'd probably say we were sitting, probably about 10-20% that were really anti the decision we made. But each day's gone on, I think we've been proven to have made the correct decision. But, I understand it. People have planned their holidays, organised their annual leave. This was the big tournament they were going to go to and play bowls in this year. And COVID's once again ripped it away from people. And, it didn't feel right.
It's an understandable, unjust frustration, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it is. It is. And especially when we're all out there and people are out there playing in their events in their local clubs and in their centres. So they're going, well, why can't we play in a national event as well? And, those were the reasons why. Really.
Yeah, I think you put it out quite succinctly there that, you staying at home in your own town is easier than staying another week. Not that there's anything wrong with spending an extra 7 days in Taranaki, but you've got to get the leave, you've got to have the money to pay for it, you've got to have the access to the accommodation.
Too many
and
things.
Everything. Too many variables.
Are there any plans, have we thought about with Taranaki get another bite of the mixed pairs and fours apple yet, Mark, or is that a bit on down the track?
Are you rolling the R as well then too?
I don't know what I said.
Taranaki. Yes, there are. Look, I think realistically, that's 2 years' time. We've made an undertaking that the singles and pairs will be in the north next year, in 23. So therefore, the fours and mixed pairs should go south. So logic says that in 2 years' time, assuming the Taranaki region is keen, then we'll be back there with the fours and mixed pairs. We owe them that, as I'd suggest we do with the fours next year and mixed pairs down in Central Otago next year. I think we owe them that too, because COVID really impacted on the fours and mixed pairs last year as well. So, a betting man. You wouldn't want to put much on it. Well, you could put a lot on it. I'd say next year the singles and pairs are in the Auckland region. The fours and mixed pairs are in Central Otago. And then in 2024, The fours and mixed pairs are in Taranaki, and then we're probably back down to Christchurch and Canterbury for the singles and pairs.
That makes sense. That seems fair and reasonable. Intercentre, how are we feeling about Intercentre? Is that an ongoing thing within this COVID world, Mark?
We're recording this, on Monday, and we're going to air on Wednesday, are we? Am I allowed to say that? Yeah? Or we're pretending to be live?
No, it's a podcast.
It's a podcast. Brilliant. So on Wednesday, we've asked all our centres to come back to us and tell us whether they're keen.
Yeah.
And it's that same scenario again, especially for the South Islanders. Do they want to get stuck in Auckland, the intercentres in Auckland, in 3 weeks' time?
Yes.
3 weeks' time. Do they want to get stuck in Auckland, face being close contacts or having COVID, and then having to self-isolate up here for 7 to 10 days? Can they afford it? Can they take that risk? Do players want to take the risk? So there's that aspect of it. What I probably am not appreciating enough, and we'll hear about it later in the week, is there are also a number of people, players, bowlers in this country, New Zealanders, who don't want to come to Auckland as well right now. We talked about 2,500 cases a day. I'm pretty sure that Auckland's probably sitting at 80 or 70 or 80% of that.
I was down in Wellington last week, and there were people around there doing the old put a bell round your neck while you're walking around town. We don't want you lot bringing your disease.
Traffic's not the only reason to avoid Auckland at the moment.
Mind you,
I don't begrudge
that
you
protest down there would have sorted it out. The super spreader event that it is, full of unvaxxed people. It should be interesting. What about the rest of the season, though? Can you make any sort of firm plans, or is this just a watching brief? You've just got to try and do it on the fly type of thing?
It is a watching brief. So Intercentre, look, I think it's 50-50 right now. And Interclub Sevens will probably follow the same theme, which is 2 weeks later again. Our secondary schools is a real risk. A lot of parents, certainly having a Nationals in Auckland, parents aren't that keen. So that's at risk. I think we'll be back on board probably in time for the Winter Champ of Champs series in July. That's my read. Although I'm optimistic that we'll play the Bowls 3-5 Interclub in May, and that's in an indoor facility, etc., and smaller numbers. It often becomes a numbers game too. So Taranaki fours and mixed pairs, there are 800 people coming into the Taranaki region for an 8-day period. That's a big headline, right? And especially if you've got COVID, Bowls community, Taranaki Bowls community, 800 people, 8 days, what were they thinking? Different to, a Bowls 3-5 Interclub in May, which is probably only 80 people over 3 days. And I think those
you can manage it a lot easier as well, yeah.
And a lot of it's perception too.
Definitely. You've got a question for the CEO.
I do, and we asked the same question a bit earlier on. So, Mark, I don't think we've briefed him on this question, but it's the one we're going to ask everybody. We call it our bonus question. So, what's the best piece of bowls advice that you've ever been given?
Yeah, good question. I've been given lots of advice over the years. Look, I think, and this sounds pretty basic and pretty practical, but the one I quite like is stay down on the mat and when you deliver the bowl. So it's very technical. But I am one of those bowlers who delivers the bowl and then starts moving straight away. So either I'm coming up or I'm just in this moving process, and I guess that's how you play sport normally. Whereas what I'm forcing myself to do is to be on the mat, deliver the bowl and stay down there, and almost stay down there for an exaggerated 3 or 4 or 5 seconds afterwards. So then I'm not moving, which I presume means and you'll know, Alex,
yes,
presume means the bowl's going to come out.
Yeah, it's
better.
good. It makes it more consistent as well because you're not trying to look after your bowl or run off to the right.
And golf, they use that a lot in terms of keep your head down putting. I mean, doesn't really do much good, but I saw a Nick Faldo thing is you should be asking your caddy what side it missed. You shouldn't be looking up or anything, because any type of movement like that, almost preemptively follow it in, it's not going to deliver the ball on the line that you want it to.
Yeah, like I think it's just, for me, that was such a basic, practical piece of advice. Unfortunately, I didn't get it until about my 3rd year. So, but working on it now, which is good.
Excellent. CEO of Bowls New Zealand, Mark Cameron, with us there. We are going to next we're going to go to Kihikihi Bowling Club and learn about their magnificent new green here on the Bowls Hour. Welcome back to the Bowls Hour, brought to you by Summerset Retirement Villages and Dynasty apparel. Good chat there with this. I don't fancy doing his job, to be perfectly honest, over the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, neither. I think they've. I couldn't imagine the sleepless nights and the stresses that would come with that. I suppose anyone who's managing any number of people in the last couple of years has not been a fun time to be.
No, it hasn't. And I think relatively the bowls community have managed to battle their way through, but so many clubs losing. I mean, just the income over the bar, for each club. I mean, it's their lifeblood. And as you say, in Auckland particularly, that period leading up to Christmas, that is a massive blow, which is going to take a few years to come back from. But bowlers are resilient people, so I'm sure it's going to be good. Okay, enough of that chat. Let's get our next guest online. Who have we got on the line there, Alex?
Yes, Miles, I've got Dave Barnett on the phone here from Kihikihi. And my first question, Dave, is how do I say your last name properly?
Barnett.
Barnett. Cool. That's good. That's what we thought it was, but I didn't want to be reading it out on the radio.
Right.
No, not right.
How do we pronounce Dave?
Yeah, just Dave, yeah.
That works well. That's cool. So for the listeners there who don't know you, could you just quickly sort of explain who you are and what your relationship is to the Kihikihi Bowling Club, please?
Oh, yeah, well, I retired in '06 and from farming, and I had played a bit of bowls beforehand and indoor bowls beforehand, and decided that was for me. So people from the Pukeatua district were bowling at Kiki, so that's why I joined Kiki. And I just joined in '06 and did some, after a year I was on the match committee, and after 4 years they made me president, and I've been president ever since.
That's good. What a great job. It's fun when you sit at the AGMs, and you sit at the front of the front row is always the dangerous one, in my opinion, to sit at an AGM, because that's when they give you all the jobs. But you must enjoy. Do you enjoy being the president of Kiki?
Yeah, they're a good bunch of members. If I ask for a working bee, they all turn up, and the members painted the inside of the club a couple of winters ago, and this year, while we couldn't bowl, we were waiting for our green, we painted the outside of the club, so very good bunch of people.
You sound like a very busy mob down there. Now, tell us about these new greens that you've got there, Dave. A little bird tells me that you invested in them for the club. Is that true?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep. Well, we had problems, nematodes mostly, and because all the good drugs for them, chemicals and things, you can't buy anymore. So the greens were fine until Christmas, and then they dried off, and they got holes in them and dead patches, and the harder we tried, the worse they seemed to get. So, but I think part of the problem was that we've only got about 7 inches of topsoil on our green.
Right.
And it's solid clay under that, which I never knew. And that's mostly the problem. And with the water we irrigated with a lot in the summer, I think it just went down 3 or 4 inches, and then in the heat of the next day, it would come back up again. And so we had a lot of trouble getting any speed out of our greens. And then, of course, with the nematodes between the two of them, I think that was a downfall. So we had no choice. We either had to shut or do something. And luckily for them, I'm in a position to pay for the greens, so we decided we'd give it a go.
That's absolutely amazing. That's an incredible investment into a club. Did they give you I'd have a red carpet just in front of you?
They've got a wee sign on the wall that they're my greens.
Ah, cool. That's good enough. That'll do the trick.
Are they called the Dave Barnett greens, or are they?
Yeah, that's correct.
Fantastic! What a president, and now you've got the greens named after you, and I'm sure the local community are grateful for that. How are people taken to those greens? What's it like playing on them?
Oh, they're beautiful to play on. Very good. They're not quite finished yet, but they've just got a little bit of work to do. But where you send your bowl, it goes, and they're really enjoying it, and we're into Twilight Bowls now that we're open again, and they're loving it too.
I suppose it removes an excuse for a bad bowl, though, doesn't it? If you,
Yeah.
if you play on a nice green, you can't really blame anyone but yourself. So the process, I mean, we're all living through this COVID thing. Did it take a bit longer than you would have liked to get those artificial greens up and running? How did you find the process of sort of from realising that
You've got to be joking. We decided in February last year, and we thought we'd be bowling in May, but the council had other ideas, and I'm not sure that all councils have the procedure that we had to go through. From what I hear, they don't. But ours, it's a hail site according to our council, and we had to prove that the soil could go somewhere. We had 400 cubic metres to come out, and we were hoping to send it down the road by tractor and trailer through club members for free, but no, it had to go to the airport, Hamilton Airport, to a controlled site and be dumped there, which was some 50 truckloads. And then at the end of that period, when it was all safely out of the road, I went down and see if I could buy it for a little job I had. And luckily for them, they told me I couldn't buy it. They had to bury it. Otherwise, I would have had a go at the council.
Fair enough.
But our consents cost us $14,000, which was rather a shock to me. And especially as we were just doing a community project and the soil is not contaminated. We had to have a scientist come in and test it. And they did that, and they wrote a letter saying that it was not contaminated or danger to human, and yet they wouldn't let us take it down the road onto this farm where we were going to spread it over 20 hectares, which you wouldn't have even seen it on the farm. So, and that delayed everything, and every time we went to put in something, they'd bring in a specialist and they'd want more consent. So that's why it took so long. And then, of course, COVID struck, so that delayed us. And then we hit Christmas, so we got one green done just before Christmas to have a tournament, our first tournament, and then they came back middle of January and they're just about finished now. So, yeah.
I mean, you sound like you're a determined individual, Dave, that's not going to get dissuaded by a red tape, mad, crazy council stitching you up. You know, did you ever get to the stage almost thinking, why on earth did I start this? I can't be bothered with this anymore.
Well, we realise now that what we should have done was just did it and not tell the council, and then we probably would have finished by the end of March.
Ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Yep. And it would have been too late to do anything, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you guys got through it, and it's great you've got your sort of two really nice artificial greens. So with your artificial greens, what are the plans for the Kihikihi Bowling Club? Are you going to run some tournaments on them, or how's it looking for the future?
Oh, yeah. We've got 3 tournaments a month right through the year. And I've started up a semi-pro extra tournament, I've called it, where we're going to charge a bit more, but the prize money would be pretty good as well. So, and we'll just see what sort of response we get. And we're going to hold a couple of charity tournaments a year. We just held one last week where we raised $860 for Winner Wish Foundation.
Oh, that's lovely.
So that was a pretty good effort.
That's cool.
And then, the club has grown already, and we use it twice a week at least, and we hope in the winter we'll use it when it's a nice day.
Have you had a response from the community? Like, they would have obviously, you can't miss tracks and tracks of soil and and things happening at a bowling club. Have you had anyone sort of pop their head in around the corner and say, like, what's happening here?
Oh, yeah, but most of them have not because of our Twilight fraternity. They have known what's sort of going on, and we have a Facebook page where there's been a lot of comments in there about what we're doing. Cool. And, we've had I haven't heard from the council at all. So I don't know what they think of the situation, and I haven't asked them either, so...
Let's ignore them, Dave. Let's ignore them.
That's fair. Okay, I've got one last question for you, Dave, and it's one we've asked everyone. Sort of a segue away from greens, but what's the best piece of bowls advice you've been given?
Oh, I don't know, but I don't know about being given it, but I've learned that just keep at it, though. Keep trying. And you have a bad day today, but it only takes one bowl to bring you back tomorrow.
That's a good positive attitude, Dave. Thank you so much for your time. And, I think it's amazing what you've done, investing your own money into your community, into that club, despite all the obstructions in your way. Well done on that. And if ever I'm in the district, Dave, I'll give you a shout and come and have a roll up.
Yeah, welcome. Yeah, we've got the CEO of Hamilton playing for us in the ladies' tournament next month, so there you go.
There you go. Elite company indeed. Dave Barnett there, of the president of the Kihikihi Bowling Club. Right, you've asked everyone the questions, Alex.
Yes.
Time to ask you, what is the best bit of bowls advice that you've been given?
Well, I've thought about this for a while. I think there are two key bits. There's two best bits of bowls advice. The first one is the little circle goes on the inside. I think that's really important, because if you don't get that bit right, your bowl's never going to go where you aim it.
I even saw Mike Galloway bowl a wrong bias in bowls 3-5 once.
Yeah,
so it happens to the best.
Be a low point of any career. And the other bit of advice I got is for skips, and it's about how you phrase a direction. So if you were playing for me, instead of a lot of skips would go, Miles, play this side and don't be narrow. You're much better to go, play this side and wide is good. So you sort of, when you're skipping, think about how you're phrasing. So
more
your
of a positive thing rather than
Finish
negative.
on a positive
Don't
thing.
do that.
Yeah.
Think saying, "Oh, this is great.
Yeah,
Do
wide's
plenty
good.
of time.
Yeah.
Wide's good. Just go, so you don't put too much pressure on." The best bit of bowls advice I was given was take up tiddlywinks. Was the only one. Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us for this episode of the Bowls Hour, the show for all things bowls. Don't forget, share this podcast far and wide. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, Facebook, and the Bowls New Zealand website. We're everywhere. Tune in next week for more Bowls Chat. Until then, roll on.
They were rampaging along, won their first two games. They've lost their last two, but they could have probably won both of them. A fantastic looking facility there in the deep south. I'm sure they're going to come out firing tonight. From memory, he was leading last week. Are you going to be leading this week, or from bottom with 6 points and second from bottom with 3?
Yes and no.
Yes and no. It paid off for them. They got a 2, double the 4 and won 6 points. Depends what the teams above you do, doesn't it?
The Bowls Hour, brought to you by Summerset Retirement Villages and Dynasty Apparel.